Hello, Sharif here, and looking forward to today's perhaps doubleheader. I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But before I go into any of that, I want to, for those of you who may be new to the live stream, I want to talk to you about what we're doing, the view inside the chrysalis. We're looking at world events, local events from the perspective of Commonwealth, and that perspective includes inclusivity, wisdom, understanding that it's possible for us to create a world that works for all, and therefore it's important for us to create a world that works for all. Um, our challenge in that, our primary challenge, is ourselves. It's a change of consciousness, not trying to change those people over there, trying to change their consciousness to align with mine, but to try to change all of our consciousnesses in order for us to align with the will of the all. Um, we begin with a meditation. And every day I've been saying, okay, I'm going to have my meditation timer already set up and ready to rock and roll. And I almost never do that. So I'm setting up my timer. Maybe this is like, who was it? Mr. Rogers, where he has to take his shoes off on camera and put his slippers on. So this is my putting my slippers on. And this is a relatively short meditation. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and sink into your meditative space. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes. As many of you know, the key to meditation is breathing. So I would invite you to relax your breathing. When you breathe in, take in what you need. When you breathe out, release what doesn't work for you. Feel yourself drop into your heart, moving away from the world of thought into the world of being. And when you're ready, I invite you to come back to your center. I invite you to open your eyes, and we can begin. Um, when I said we may be having a double header, I am, as I've mentioned in prior live casts, that because I haven't learned the art of reading comments, thinking, and doing the live cast at the same time. So I said I'm working one session in arrears, and I said that I would cover whatever came up from our last session, and I would then go into what may be a regular Friday event, which is the practicing wisdom concept. And so um, when I started looking at, only a couple of comments came in. Okay. Um, but when I started looking at a couple of them, they were pretty meaty. So my goal is to go through the comments and then do practicing wisdom. But if the comments take longer, so be it. I would rather be brief and thorough than just brief. Um, the comments may carry over into Monday. And there may be more comments that you have. And I better pull up my comments channel to see if anybody's making any. Um, so let's go ahead and begin. And I'll begin with a sip from my yerba mate, which is a switch from my usual black tea. Yerba mate is a really great habit that I picked up when I was in Argentina. Um, so the first comment that I got was from Brenda Graham. She said, I appreciate all of the thought you put into presenting solutions that address our demise. Thank you. Nice to know that that you appreciate it. I don't think that we have the luxury of 1,000 years to transform our priorities. So, Brenda, that comment was echoed by a very long and comprehensive comment that I am going to try to unpack today from Yves Dubois. So, Yves said, I read the appendix and found it very interesting. Thank you. Some comments, and he has like 4 or 5 that I'm going to go through. This is the first one. We do not have 1,000 years to change the current situation, maybe 50 to 75 years at the most. To both Eve and Brenda, yes, you are correct. We don't have 1,000 years to make up our mind what we want to do. But we do have the time that we've got right now to make a decision on how we wish to live our lives over the next 1,000 years. Now that's different. And I want to, this is going to take a little bit of unpacking because I don't want us to um, go Pollyanna and just say, oh, everything's going to be just fine and we're all going to be really happy. And I'm not going to think of any details right now. At the same time, I don't want us to get lost in gloom and doom and naysaying and everything is so crappy. There's a line that we're walking, okay? And that line is staying away from fear. There's lots and lots of stuff that can swallow us up, but we can navigate it, and we can navigate it without fear. I have a friend, actually, I have a couple of friends who drive their cars as though they're afraid, constantly afraid of something bad happening on the road. I do my very best to stay out of their cars, okay? Because they're not driving from their core, their center, they're driving from their fear. Something bad will happen, and they won't be prepared for it because they're so busy anticipating what could happen. Every time you take a plug and you plug it into the outlet on your wall or on your extension cord or whatever, every time you do that, you're handling enough electrical power to kill you. And you don't even think about it. You don't think about it because you know how to do it. You are confident that you have the skills to do it. You have done this before. You've seen other people do this before, and you therefore can relax into it. It it probably doesn't cross your mind that, oh my God, I could die if I plug this in wrong. Um, the outlets are designed for you to get it right 10 times out of 10. And so the challenge is with our societal transformation, for transforming ourselves from the mess we've got right now. And for those of you who have read Creating a World That Works for All, I use the word mess as a technical term for all of our societal um, challenges and our societal transformation. Um, so the problem that we've got is that we are dancing around without any plans. We don't have we have not sat down as human beings and said, okay, some folks want to go to Mars. Where does that fit as a priority? How many billions of dollars should I be spending right now to get to Mars? Um, and given what our world is facing right now, for the next, I'd say 20, 30, 40 years, we should be spending very, very, very tiny little bit of money. Where do we sit in terms of making sure that all human beings on our planet are adequately fed? That should be a very, very high priority. Where should we fit where the people who are living in low-lying areas who could be inundated with global climate change, where do we fit with moving them to safer and more secure locations? That should be very high on our list. So what we are in fact doing is the exact opposite of all the things we should be doing. We're spending billions of dollars to get to Mars right now. We have billions of dollars of equipment on Mars right now. Billions of dollars to get the equipment there, and there are people starving in on Earth right now. Why don't we flip the priority? We can't flip the priority unless we have a discussion of what our priorities are. And that appendix that I sent you, Appendix 3, the 1,000-year plan, is simply an idea, a place to start talking about and looking at our human priorities over the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, etc. So I hope you get that I'm not telling anybody, oh, let's wait 1,000 years to start doing things. No, let's wait till right now to start doing things. But let's start doing things based on our priorities. That our priority for getting to the moon or getting to Mars is a lot less but we will get to it. We'll get to it in 30, 40, 50 years. The other stuff that I'm saying is like stuff that we have to do right now. Okay. Second point that Eve brought up, he said the transition has to be entirely nonviolent. I'm inspired by the way Gandhi, Mandela, Havel have been able to change their countries with limited casualties. And I would say no casualties on their part. The opposition may have created some. Absolutely. I am. This is right out of the new book, and You are talking about three of the people that I call in my lineage. And you should be, well, all of us should be thinking about our lineage. Who is it who inspires you to act? Not inspires you to like say, that person has some really flowery words. I really appreciate their flowery words. They're like hot air balloons rising in the sky, But what's that got to do with how I'm living my life? What Gandhi did, what Mandela did, what Havel did, what King did was show people directly how to change their society and therefore their reality. I find it interesting, but not interesting, that these icons um, of societal transformation, the people I call my go-to team, the people that I consider to be um, the ones further along in this path than I am, we don't talk about them. Sure, on each of their birthdays, we trot them out and say, have pictures. And on the Martin Luther King Day, you hear the I Have a Dream speech about 20 times. You hear a whole bunch of gospel music, and then we pack them back away for the rest of the year. It's amazing when I've gone to Europe how many people don't talk about Havel, how many people don't understand the profundity of the work that he did. When he was alive, I was expecting there to be, the Václav Havel School of Political Discourse in some university somewhere. And as far as I can see, it's not anywhere. And maybe it's because it's effective, and maybe it's because it works. And who doesn't want that to work? Remember the live stream I did a week or so ago? Who does not want to see a world that works for all? And then I pause so that I can see whether or not I've said that enough. Let me go on to his other comments here, because he made a lot of them. Okay. So this is what Eve also said. We need to get away from the 4-year election cycle and have leaders that are put in charge by the people, for the people, and due to their capacity to engage in a long-term vision of the earth. Yes. And by getting away from the 4-year election cycle, I mean getting way, way away from it. Getting to the point that we are operating from what I've been calling holonic consciousness, where my consciousness is one with yours. My consciousness is indistinguishable from yours. My consciousness is, and we practice we do the work of common consciousness. And we get that to the point that we know the right thing to do. We know it. We don't have to convince each other. We don't have to debate this in Congress, etc. We don't have to create a whole bunch of politicians who get elected and then are beholden to the financial interest that put them in power in the first place. We can connect with a long-term vision of the earth and insist that all of those who help govern all of us are connected with it also. A lot more to say about that, but I don't have I'm on a roll here. Um, Eve said, I'm greatly inspired by people going down in the streets and demonstrating nonviolently, as the women in Iran. A regime cannot shoot down or put in prison hundreds of thousands of people. That also has been my inspiration. When we looked at the people power demonstrations that took place um, in the um, late 80s, starting with the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia, and then going to the various Arab Spring uprisings, the Orange Revolution in the Ukraine. When you see 1 million people crowded into the central square as a self-governing unit, their behavior is governed by, oh goodness, I keep forgetting to turn my I turn my phone off, but I don't turn my watch off. I thought that was gonna working automatically. Um, oh well. Um, so you see these hundreds of thousands, literally millions of people who are self-regulating. Why can't we do that all the time? Why can't we do that not just in the middle of a political crisis, not just in the middle of an economic crisis, but in the middle of how we live our lives? We can do that. There are examples of how we can do that. But in order for us to see that, we have to be looking for it. As long as the ruling powers can turn um, something that can work into something that goes right back to our status quo, we won't be able to do that. Give you an example. At the rate we're doing mass shootings, we'll probably have one in the next couple of days. If it's a really bad one, Congress will get involved. And the way Congress gets involved is to flap their lips until it goes away. And half of Congress is saying, we need gun control. And the other half of Congress is saying, we need more guns on the street to keep this from happening. And they go, yeah, 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 yeah. And then it's over, it's done. Nothing changes. And then there's another shooting and they go, yeah, 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 yeah. And then it's nothing changes. That's because we're asking the wrong questions. The question is not about gun control. The question is not about we need more guns on the streets. The question is, how do you keep guns out of the hands of people who should never have a gun in their hands? Once you approach it like that, you get the people who are current gun owners and people who are against guns to come together and figure out how to do that. But as long as they have stated the most extreme positions for themselves, they can't come together. Who doesn't want them to come together? Well, all the people who are currently in power right now. Okay. And it looks like I am not going to get to practicing wisdom at all today. Um, um, one other thing about this last point that Eve had. Um, a regime cannot shoot down or put in prison hundreds of thousands of people. Well, they can. And what you see happening in Myanmar, in Burma right now, is a regime that is oppressing the entire population. But when there is a vision, and that vision is clear enough and is accepted in the deepest parts of the society, that vision always prevails. Yeah, Václav Havel went to prison. Nelson Mandela went to prison for a long time. That can happen. But if you are holding the vision of the entire society, it's a matter of time before all that gets thrown out. If you read The Power of the Powerless by Václav Havel, or The Art of the Impossible by Václav Havel, or any of Nelson Mandela's writings, you see the methodology for doing it. We're not making this up from scratch. Going all the way back to Gandhi, we know how to do that. It's time for us to do that. Okay. It's not his last point. Oh, goodness gracious. He had a lot of points. Uh, um, it's going to be my last point with him. And Eve said, as for wars, what if the majority of the soldiers bluntly refused to go fight the neighboring country? Well, there wouldn't be a war. How does a society how do the elites get people to go to war? I think it was Goebbels in Nazi Germany who was saying, yeah, how do you get one farm boy to go and fight another farm boy, leave their farms and go fight each other? You have to convince them that they're being threatened. You have to make them afraid. You have to make them afraid of the other. And you have to make them afraid on some basic level. They're going to take your farm, they're going to take your wife, they're going to take your children and eat them. They're just monsters, and the only thing you can do is destroy them, etc. So when I was doing my work in Sri Lanka, when I would visit Tamil communities, they would say to me through my interpreter, oh, it's those Sinhalese, they're the ones that are oppressing us. If they stop oppressing us, everything is fine. And then I go over to the Sinhalese communities and they say, oh, it's those Tamils that are oppressing us. They are the ones with all the money and all the power. If they just stopped oppressing us, then we'd be okay. And the ones who are really in charge, the ones who are really, driving the show, they know it's a show. They were clear that it was a show. We, and by we I mean Sarvodia, the organization I worked with there for a long time, were working toward getting people to open their eyes to see. You can't just start by going to the soldiers and saying, don't fight, because they're wrapped in fear. They're wrapped in what would happen if they didn't fight, etc. You have to work up to that. We were working up to that. Part of our game plan, part of the game plan that we had for what we call the Peace Action Plan, was to get people to, and this is very strategic for Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, people, especially men, young boys, revere their mothers. Their mothers are like demigods. And Sarvodia had lots and lots of women in the organization, working in the organization. And so at one point, we were just going to tell the mothers on both sides, tell your son to come home. That's all. Just come home. You have to see your mother and watch what happens. Our problem was that we got to peace too soon. We never got the chance to try that strategy. Looking for some place in the world to still do that. Shoot, it is now That was a very quick half hour. I've got 2 or 3 more comments that Eve said. Very, very good stuff. I may get to them on Monday. We obviously didn't do any. Oh, I'm going to stretch this for another 2 minutes because the comment that I had for the practicing wisdom is just too good not to do. So I think I've got it punched up. Here we go. This is Václav Havel. He says, the profound crisis of human identity brought on by living within a lie appears as a deep moral crisis in society. A person who has been seduced by the consumer value system, who has no roots in the order of being, no sense of responsibility for anything higher than his or her own personal survival, is a demoralized person. The system depends on this demoralization, deepens it, is in fact a projection of the demoralization into the society. I think that you only need to spend a couple of seconds to see that we're actually right there right now. And I just saw there's a whole bunch of comments that were made on my comments. I promise we'll get to this on Monday. So this is going to be 1,000-Year Vision Part 3. I thought there's only going to be 2 parts to it. Again, this is me being disciplined and saying to you, I'll see you all on Monday, and may all beings be well. May all beings be secure. May all beings be happy. Bye.